So welcome everyone to the Agile Professionals Meetup. Nice to see familiar faces and new faces here today. A little bit about REI Systems first. REI Systems is, we're just celebrating our 30th year as a company, and we are mostly focused on federal government contracts in the spaces of grants management and open government transparency solutions and modernizations. We also work for NASA as well, and we are hiring. We have huge hiring goals for this year. Feel free to come check us out, take a look at our career, see if this might be the place for you. We're rated by the Washington Post as one of the top workplaces in the DC area, and really exciting place to work. So check us out. Today we have David and David coming to present their session that was accepted at the Agile Alliance's North American Conference, Agile 2019, which is going to be in Washington, DC this year. In a month, a little over a month left to go. Oh my God. And they will be, you'll get a preview. If you are going, you'll get a preview of what their talk is. Very interesting talk. I've been kind of, I've known David and David for a long time now, it seems, and they've kind of been compatriots in working in agility in government in this space. And so I'm really honored to have them coming here and presenting their session. So without further ado, I give you over to David and David. Give them a hand.
With a lot of presentations, you start off with a bit of introduction about the speakers, but we're first going to give you some real fast bullets about what the different Agile hells are, and we'll introduce ourselves later while you prioritize what we're going to talk about. So, you want to start or you want me to start?
Let's quickly do, for anybody who has not already done our smoke test, go ahead and go to pollev.com/DavidBujard529 on your device of choice. And just verify that you can answer a question. We're going to use this system heavily throughout our presentation, and it'll make things a little faster if you've answered at least one. I'm crushed to realize that the Packer shirts are firmly outpointed to vests. Mr. Fogel always wears a vest. I invariably wear a Packer shirt. If only I'd been actually in green and gold. Undoubtedly, we would have trounced the vests.
We're going to need a vest. Sorry, I'm coming back again.
All right. Can I ask you, Matthias, when you're ready, could you move your cursor, say, over to this quadrant, and you'll see a little next button that shows up. Yeah, I'm going to click next. There you go. And just drift your cursor away so that doesn't come back up.
Okay. So you can be voting on these as we're talking. There'll be a window of time, again, as we're introducing ourselves, to do some more voting. So if you want to just listen or if you want to vote, that's up to you. So the first one we want to talk about is the No Transformation Hell. This is an organization that has either tried to do an Agile transformation or is about to do an Agile transformation, but isn't quite making the progress that they want.
So the next one, which had been on the list, I see we're reorganizing behind us. That's all right.
This one's we.
It's all right.
Okay.
So next one was Too Big Hell.
Okay.
And Too Big Hell is everything works better in small batches. So naturally, all of our companies, frankly, all of us in our personal lives, tend to do things in very large batches. So Too Big Hell is all the things that go wrong when you're juggling too many things and trying to do too many things, serve too many masters or too many goals all at once.
So Too Fast Hell, Agile is very much about fast feedback loops, but there is such a thing as like changing priorities, and the team doesn't concentrate on flow because they're responding too fast to the environment and the things that are around them.
Is the next one product owners?
Well, on this list it's technical. I think you can probably go next.
I'll go with technical.
Okay.
So many organizations, Agile is all about delivery, about making a change and getting it into the hands of people who can use that change and then tell you how it went. As a result, for people working in software, the number one problem is technical issues that get in the way of deployments. So generally, this will be manual regression testing, problems with the code, difficulties in automation. All of these we've wrapped up in a single technical help. Depending on our client group, I would even say there are 9 levels of Agile HAL, but for now, if this is your particular pain point, go ahead and upvote technical HAL.
So our next one is no trust HAL. And if we were going to do like a Venn diagram about all these things, a lot of them would fall into no trust HAL. So no trust HAL is when you have a lack of confidence between organizations, there's maybe a lack of empathy, too much ego. In other words, you're doing contract negotiation over collaboration. Now you can do product owner.
All right. So we have found, in working in the government in particular, that many of the challenges that organizations encounter are due to too much or too little involvement from the product owner. So much so that we'd say that is its own special ring of hell. And certainly one that has been a prominent one in every organization we've been a part of. Often this is evinced by somebody who is a product owner in title only, but otherwise functions as if they're a manager, or somebody who says, oh, a product owner only shows up at the planning meeting and the demo, right? And then you don't see them in between. There is also some cases where you're just getting a product owner who is too involved, someone who is specifying not just what is the most important thing and providing information from the business users, they're also telling the team exactly how they should do their job as developers.
All right, I'm going to take the next two, which is Stovepipe HAL and Collaboration HAL. The differentiation between them, Collaboration HAL is about the team level. So the team is doing their each individual work. They're not doing any pair programming. They're not working together to understand each other's needs. And then Stovepipe HAL is when you have multiple teams, or maybe even a whole siloed organization. The lack of DevOps is often the result of Stovepipe HAL. So they're both basically about collaboration, but we define the Collaboration HAL as at the team level.
There's our last one, Leadership HAL?
Yes.
So we have found that in fact, many people have observed an organization can only be as agile as its leaders. And so there are many ways in which you can try to work towards helping an organization to greater agility and find that the pressures that the leaders encounter and the leadership culture that they expect is a principal impediment to Agile adoption. So if you were in that particular environment, that's a scenario that you've struggled with, we have some solutions that we'd like to propose for Leadership HAL. So what we're going to do is going to ask you to vote, which is the most important, and we commit that we're going to cover the top 5 most pressing Agile HALs that you have prioritized. We'll even single one out as a 6th stretch HAL if we have enough time to get to it.
But so the point is, we're kind of eating our dog food as far as Agile practices. We're prioritizing, and you're prioritizing really, and we're going to do as much as we can within our time box. All right, but now we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Dave.
I am also Dave.
I'm an Agile enthusiast.
I'm also an Agile enthusiast.
I'm a geek dad.
I am a geek dad of 2 boys.
I am the founder of the DHS Lunch and Learn. I guess you're also a former. So we need to change that one.
And I actually currently run the DHS Agile Learning Brown Bag, which still has its snappy name of the Agile Chat and Chew.
All right, you kick us up for next one.
I am a contractor for the federal government. I support DHS, the Department of Homeland Security in multiple components. I definitely do not speak for the Department of Homeland Security or any of its components in this.
I am a federal employee. For my second day, I am an Agile professor at Defense Acquisition University. I do not speak for the Defense Acquisition University. I used to be at TSA as of this past Friday, so you might have seen notices on that. By the way, I was in the Army for 10 years. That guided a lot of my principles in adopting this stuff.
Yeah. And while I was learning to be an Agilist and Scrum Master and Coach, I was also volunteering as a lay chaplain at Georgetown University for about 10 years. So we bring a lot of experience to our different roles, in addition to our strong similarities in name.
So I guess I'll go ahead and scribe up our hells now.
I see the very top priority is no transformation hell, just going through the motion. Leadership hell is a head by a nose, followed by stovepiped, collaboration, and no trust. Our sixth stretch hell is technical hell. Interesting. So the interesting thing, we've presented this close to 10 times, I think now, and at each session, the exact priority changes, and the feedback from the group that we're presenting to changes each time. So we've had a number of people who've attended multiple sessions, including Will now. And it's really a new set of information each time. So we're looking forward to discussing this.
So even if you do go to Agile 2019, you might hear a lot of different things because it is so interactive and a bit improvisational. If you're not going, but you have friends who are going, tell them to go to our session.
Absolutely. So Matthias, could I ask you to move the cursor to the next button again? Let's hit that next one. Okay, so we're drawing the ball back in your court. Could I ask you to go to polybee.com/DavidBujard529 and give us one word. In one word, how do people feel in no transformation hell? So if you've highly prioritized this is an experience you've probably been in no transformation hell, maybe you've observed it, maybe you've observed it in a couple different organizations. How do people feel when they're in no transformation hell? What emotions do you observe?
So and it has to be one word. If you really, really want to use two words, you can use like an underscore in order to make it, 2 words. If you put a space between it, it'll count it as like 2 separate entries. Oh, and by the way, even after you've submitted your one word, you can submit another one word. If you see a word up here that resonates with you, please type that one in because that helps us focus on something. So if frustrated is how you feel free to type in frustrated again. So somebody get frustrated. Each of you should type those other words.
Okay. So what we've noticed about no transformation hell is one is that it was at the top of our list for a reason. It is probably the most commonly experienced Agile hell, and it is from an organization that says, guys, clearly these other companies are eating our lunch. We need to do Agile. Quick, give me 1 unit of Agile. and it's set in motion, and everyone involved often doesn't know what is involved, nor do they completely understand why they're doing it. So if I can share one escape from our friend William Stridham, he would begin by saying, so why is it, company leaders, that you want to become Agile? What's in it for you? And then he would have that conversation about why. That's one. If you happen to catch your leaders in an early in the process, that is one possible escape, because then in the rollout of whatever follows, you can ground everything about the Agile adoption with this is why we're doing it, not in order to be Agile, but because we want to serve our customers better, or we want to deploy more quickly, or we want to pivot to the market to what the marketplace is doing. But do you have a story about no transformation?
I have a couple of them. One is at USCIS, there was a guy, Mark Schwartz. He's written some awesome books, by the way. And one of the things that I feel Mark Schwartz did was he forced the people in the layer underneath him to be empowering. So again, he was not giving them an option about being the type of empowerment leader. You cannot be command and control. I am being command and control in the fact that you are required to not be command and control. And he took the reins. Over at TSA, we had a person who was a big transformation leader within TSA, and the joke was that she walked around with a baseball bat saying, "Stop using baseball bats." Right? And so, you talk about somebody has resonated the idea of being helpless. Sometimes it helps to have that person, particularly if they can be high up. But Angela was not a high-ranking person, but she was still just very, very passionate about it. And she put herself out there, and enough people respected the fact that she was trying to, encourage good practices that, quite frankly, they forgave some of the less than political things that she did in order to encourage good agile practices amongst the enterprise.
I'm really curious about frustrated. It's striking that several people have written that one. Could I ask somebody what makes you frustrated with the no transformation hub?
Because they're just wasting time. They're wasting their time, they're wasting our time. The goal for doing a transformation is to do what you said, to pivot, to be able to respond, to do things faster and better. And then when they're not doing that, it's just frustrating.
They're wasting time. There's an opportunity being lost.
It's a bit like being sold a raw bill of goods. When you're told, or a bad bill of goods, when you're told, hey, we're going to be transforming, and then the transformation is like, we don't know what we're actually going to do, just do it. That's what's frustrating, because you can attempt to put together a plan and help the enterprise, the organization, but if they don't listen to you and just want to do their own thing, then there's not a meeting of the minds in that respect.
Go ahead, Will. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well,
for me, it's when the leadership or whatever gets stuck on the idea of the mechanics as being agile, as opposed to getting to the philosophy of, why we do the things that we do. They're not thinking about why we do sprints or why we do retrospectives, just that we are doing it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it produces, you just have to do that.
I'm really glad you brought that one up, because that gets to one of our 2 silver bullets on no transformation. So there's this thing called shuhari. Please raise your hand if you've heard of shuhari. And so at the shu stage, I get this thing, HelloFresh. It's like I get a recipe and ingredients, and they're delivered to my door, the exact ingredients that I need. And then shu, I'm doing exactly what the recipe says to do with the exact ingredients. In ha, I might apply different ingredients to the same recipe. So I'm just tweaking it just a little bit because I understand what that is about. And then in re, now I've made enough soups that I know how to make soups. I understand the chemistry there, and now I'm working on a whole new type of food and whatnot. Apply that back to our Agile. Sometimes we need to start out with those practices, and then we start following that up with, this is why we're doing this. Right? Let's start meeting every 2 weeks. I'm going to explain to you later why that's important, but until we start meeting every 2 weeks and doing some retrospectives and understanding what's going on, we won't really have the information to understand the why, because we haven't been having those conversations every 2 weeks. So you start out with the shu, and then you quickly move into the ha, and that's where good agile coaching or somebody who's carrying that baseball bat is important to move you out of shu, because you can't just stay there doing, anybody heard of taco agile? You haven't heard of this one?
No.
Titles and ceremonies only.
I see.
And so taco agile is you're stuck in shu. You have not moved to ha, and so it helps to have that agile coach or transformation leader.
Yeah. And have an experience that taco is not where you stop.
Right.
You don't stop at the cargo cult. A second silver bullet that helps organizations move past this is to put a face on it. So get the people who are doing Agile and say, you must go and see people actually use what you're producing. You have to actually go observe them use your software, or observe them do the process, whatever it is. Put a face on it. Bring in the people who they've observed doing this work, and inject them into the ceremonies and say, oh, at our demo, we're now going to present to Sarah from the field, who's going to see what this is. And instead of you guys demoing it, actually, she's going to be the one with hands on the keyboard. And she's going to demo to the rest of you how she would use it or not use it, right? So put a face on it.
All right, that's our time box for this help. Dave, should I do 6 minutes or 7? Or something else?
Let's do 7 minutes for the next one.
Okay.
All right, Matthias, so any questions about no trust, Hal, going through the motions? We good on this one? We have 2 escapes. Don't stop at shoe, start at shoe, and put a face on it.
This wasn't no trust though, was it?
I'm sorry, yes, thank you for catching that. This was...
No, I got lots of questions about no trust.
No transformation.
There it is. Matthias, could I ask you to move the cursor over to next? And let's talk about leadership help, which was your second highest prioritized help. And in one word, what do you see people doing in leadership help? What do you see people doing in leadership help?
So while we're talking about that, sometimes one of the feedbacks we've gotten is that we sometimes forget to explain the silver bullet, how you escape from the hell, and that's the whole point of this, not just to explain the anti-pattern, but how to anti-pattern? So how to escape from the hell. So if you feel like you haven't gotten it, there's probably a good chance that somebody else hasn't gotten it. Please raise your hand and say, give us the silver bullet, give us the escape, as Dave Bujard and Dave Fogel see it.
People means other people or?
We've heard this in previous presentations. So if we reach the end of it talking about one of our rings of hell and you don't know what to do about it, if you're, we want to be very clear. Oh, okay, I see. In one word, what do people in the organization, so it could be if you as part of the system, what do you do? But what do leaders do? How do you see people responding when they are experiencing leadership hell? We're looking at actions that people in the system are taking.
And again, please reuse a word if it resonates with you.
Oh, in one word. Sorry, mine was stiff.
Aha, it happens. Don't worry about it.
Didn't follow instructions very well.
So some of the leadership, one story that I have about leadership hell is a federal leader, highly capable, strong sense of agile mindset, really focused on delivery and the customer, turning to me and saying, you know, Dave, I like the ideas that you're talking about and I would love to do them. But right now, and then he would gesture at his inbox, which is full of emails from his boss. Right now, I'm not allowed to have a brain. So that early on, there was a note about busy work, right? And so that's one manifestation of agile, of leadership hell, which is the leader who is always trying to give orders, say do this, do that, without actually allowing the people within the organization to tap their own experience and bring their own expertise to the situation. Do you have an example?
So I at one point had a supervisor who is supposedly leading an agile organization, but this was a very command and control person. This person was also actually very passionate about his work in government. So even though he was command and control, he had his heart, quite frankly, in the right place. He took care of his team. Happened to be in the office while he was yelling at the leadership above him to defend the teams that worked for him. And so the key there, we had to play to his strengths. So even though this person was command and control, we recognized that, we said, hey, you're not always going to be around. You have so much use or lose that our boss's boss is saying you need to take some time off. How are you going to handle that situation when you're gone? Well, how about if you appoint 1 or 2 people to be your your delegate while you're gone. So even though you're command and control, you have to trust this person so much. So you have that delegate, and so he has to have a special relationship. He has to very clearly communicate to that delegate. And of course that means giving up some of the control that this person utilizes as his safety for his own career and for the organization that he's passionate about. There's a thing called spiral integral dynamics. Anybody heard of this? It's kind of cool stuff. And one of the things is if you imagine a fire person and in the middle of the fire, you cannot think or have discussions or arguments. You have to go rescue people right now. That's the priority. Just afterwards, the chief might say, all right, I can see you're extra tired, you exhausted yourself, please take the next day off. I'm going to need you to work an extra shift in order to cover for that person, that sort of thing. You do some of those after actions and people can react to those things. And then the next day might say, what supplies do we need so that we can better fight fires next time? So the point is, one leader might shift, but some people, they're always thinking like that in the middle of the fire kind of person. And one of the things that spiral integral dynamics tells us is that if you have a person in that situation, you look for their strengths. And so in my case, I had a command and control person. You want to maintain that control even when you're not visible, when you're not around. You need to find at least one person that you trust so you can entitle them.
So with leaders, generally speaking, you're tempted as hell to try to change them, and that will not succeed. Generally speaking, a more successful strategy is to serve that leader by identifying how could I help this person become better at what they are, right? So it's not fundamental change, but rather a change of focus on the edge towards what will be healthy for the organization. Let's see, we have another good example of that. I think one example might be for a leader who basically wants to know everything, that their mode of leadership is the expert leader, right? And so, they'll sit there and in a meeting, anytime information is presented to them, they'll say, oh yes, I knew that. Yes. That kind of leader, what would best serve them? You're probably not going to change the fact that they derive their own their own sense of purpose and value from what they know, but they might be willing to do some research. You might be able to challenge them. You might be able to share information with them and say, for example, you know this generally, but this resource has a little more detail that you might find interesting, right? So there are ways of finding who is the particular leader and then asking yourself, how could this person be more of what they are in a way that's a little more effective and healthy for this organization?
But I recommend Googling integral spiral dynamics because there's a lot of insight there on how to figure out what type of leader your leadership hell is and then playing to their strengths.
Yeah. Let's apply that to micromanaging. So a lot of people pointing that out. And a good example, often leaders really want to dictate. And so there's a part of Agile which focuses on how can you get increased predictability, right? Not in the sense of a say-do ratio, but in the sense of consistently getting small things done with very little variation. So you can focus a lot on shorter cycle time, focus a lot on working very small. Why would you do these things? So that micromanaging leader, you can make promises that we can keep. Okay? So that is one thing that leading Agile. Joshua Kiriev's, I'm sorry, wrong person. I'll come up with it later, but the founder of Leading Agile would stress heavily is most large organizations with micromanaging tendencies, what they most need first and foremost is an emphasis on predictability.
Is that Mike Codmeyer?
Codmeyer, there it is.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready to move on. Are there anything else? I see Vigilantes that I want to briefly pause on. I'm really interested in somebody who's seen people act as vigilantes in their organization.
I'm going to time box at 3 minutes so we don't go too long in this one subject, but let's go a little bit longer.
Vigilantes, who can speak to that?
I think I would probably say I've seen behavior where you have leadership vacuums or lack of leadership where people just kind of go their own way and there's like a drop in alignment, a drop in, processes don't get followed, people break the rules, and I guess that's kind of like vigilanteism.
Okay. So a leader who does not strongly lead and other people begin exerting autonomy without alignment.
Right.
Have you encountered a good escape for that?
firing people. No. I only say that because I did see a situation where there was that situation, and they didn't get fired, but they left, and it just had the most profound impact across the entire organization. And they weren't even a leader; they had a very key position, and they just left, and it had a profound impact on, you know, all of a sudden, kind of a lot of things kind of self-streamlined themselves as everyone readjusted when after this person left. So
I'm going to put a pin in that one. We'll come back to it when we get to collaboration help, because that is kind of a team dynamic thing. So we're going to definitely discuss it.
But obviously, if people are kind of just going rogue, you want to at least bring them to the table and maybe have some kind of engagement there.
Bringing them to the table and having them talk about what was the good that you were trying to accomplish, and often even just saying, when you took this action, how did you see what was happening in the rest of the organization? What was the story that you were responding to? And just that action, I've seen on one team that is experiencing that, produces a profound synergy because the different people were telling radically different stories. And when they began just speaking out loud, this is the way I see it, then we became still autonomous, but significantly more aligned.
You're being the vigilante in this case.
Yes, there it is.
The rogue one. All right, so I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock for our next help, because we're a little bit behind our time box. So Matthias can take us to our next one.
Okay, for Stovepipe help, this is a question. This is a different kind of format. So when you go, you'll see that you can enter a free text. You can use spaces. Spaces are back. You can hold phrases. How would you escape from stovepiped hell? Okay. This is something that many of you have encountered. Some of you didn't prioritize it as highly. Maybe some of you have solved this particular problem. And so as you enter it, you'll begin to see other people have made suggestions, and you can +1 them, right? You can upvote them, and over time we'll see what are the most common suggestions, most common escapes rising to the top.
All right, I'm going to start talking with this first one that's been put up about starting over from scratch. It's actually really tough to do, and that kind of fits into no transformation hell. That said, at TSA, there was a Agile contract, and it was one of those big Agile contracts, and written into it was the vendor had to help us bridge our gap amongst our various stovepipe parts with engineering and with the development and the engineering. So we, in a sense, we did get to start over from scratch, and we're introducing a third party to help us with that. That is not necessarily a silver bullet that I would recommend. Amal can testify that it was actually a very difficult experience, and they continue to have difficulty bridging that gap because the third party was not necessarily empowered. So starting over from scratch is a really tough one to do.
Can you redefine what stovepipe hell is?
Great point. And so this
That's
is
what
where
I wanted to know too.
different organizations, so different units within the same organization have difficulty working together. Each one operates in their own silo with poor coordination with the other units of the organization that they must coordinate with in order to get anything done.
So it might be we're doing development, you're doing engineering and deployment, and those two don't talk to each other. I had one organization where one set of developers was doing data ingestion, and another one was doing the display of data. And so there were two separate enterprises because there were such massive amounts of data going in and out. But the two didn't talk to each other, so you can imagine there was issues, metric and standard type thing.
Yeah. One example of a silo hell kind of successfully being escaped. There's a contract at one of the organizations that I've worked with, and that contract focused on performance testing. It's generally all sorts of IT&E testing, but there was a new performance testing group. They came in and they said, all right, developers, I know that you are used to deploying once a day, and this has to stop because we are not able to performance test your application fast enough. You keep changing it, and we have to change our performance tests, and you need to slow down, which went over like a lead balloon because this was an organization that was actually used to performing at a very high level. And so in this case, the leaders level set and said, actually, this is our culture. We do, in fact, deploy successfully once a day. You need to be part of this team. So even though you're contractually separate, and there's a separate company that hires all of your people, you need to start locating yourself here. So they actually found spaces, nooks and crannies, a collection of different rooms where they could move that performance testing team so they were in the same building on the same floor as all the developers. They attended the daily meetings. They were in touch with the release captains who were in charge of that day's deployment, and fairly soon, they were an integral part of the larger team. So the key to that escape was some leadership from the top, insisting that everyone play well together. I would have to say that was the #1 escape. And the #2 escape was co-location makes a dramatic difference.
Such a huge difference. And so that's, somebody's already got up there. Avoid spoiling or siloing yourself. Also avoid spoiling. And I like to focus on your priorities. There's a book by Elliot Goldratt called The Goal. And a huge part of that is finding the bottleneck. And in the book, it's almost like a narrative. And they finally found the bottleneck, and then they started figuring out a way to relieve the bottleneck that in their organization. And then they found 5 new ones. And they're like, oh my gosh, we caused 5 new bottlenecks. No, those bottlenecks have always been there, but you've now revealed them because you got rid of the biggest one. So that's a thing that, but focusing on the priority, and the priority then becomes the bottleneck.
Right. I love employee DevOps. So there's a number of DevOps engineers that I work with, and they will tell me first and foremost, whenever I start talking about the technology, say, Dave. DevOps is not a tool, it is a culture. And so these technologists would say first and foremost, move together. Understand that you're part of a larger group. Some of the ways that they would suggest doing that are just simply get to know people, right? Get to know people by name, not role. Seek them out. You're more likely to actually contact them about issues if you know who they are and you've had a previous face-to-face encounter. So my team was overcoming one of these challenges last week. And so we realized that the most important thing we could do to get our work done more quickly would be to go and simply have a meet and greet with the different teams that we needed to get information from. So we bought a bunch of donuts. We had a data and donuts meet and greet with one of the development teams just because we needed to quickly contact them in the future. And having shook hands with them and provided them carbohydrates, this is going to be a lot faster in the future.
Okay. Matthias, can you do our next one?
We call it donut-driven development.
Donut-driven development, yes, DDD.
Not TDD, not BDD, DDD.
So our next one is collaboration hell, and this is at the team level. The team members are not working with each other. And can you give us one word that describes what causes this to happen? What causes teams to not collaborate?
Internal.
I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock.
Different members of the same team to not collaborate together with their teammates.
Actually, we are running close, so I'm going to put 4 minutes on. We'll probably bump that. We bumped the last one.
Can it be 2 words?
Do an underscore,
Yeah.
and then connect them that way.
Okay.
Or you could do 2 separate words if you want. But if you do word space word, it'll show up as 2 completely separate things.
Which will slowly migrate.
All right, I'm going to hit on the vigilanteism thing. I had a team where we had a person who was recurringly late, and we had it. We like did a team agreement thing, and we said, oh, we're all going to be on time, and everybody voted it up. Yep, this is going to be one of our team rules. We're going to be on time. The person continued to be on time. And then I was the Scrum Master at the time. And by the way, these were all Agile coaches. And I was the Scrum Master for a team of Agile coaches. And I said, all right, I'm going to start taking attendance. And I will only take attendance at the beginning of our sprint meetings. And the person came up to us like, wait, I was there. No, you were not there at the beginning. This is what's been recorded. Our federal product owner said, this is the practice, that we will now start taking attendance only at the beginning. So there was a two-step escape from that hell, which was A, we made a team agreement, and then B, we started basically shaming the person. You could call it shaming. Another way is, a nicer way is to say we made it transparent what was going on, so that it was very evident.
I found that creating the team agreement, so actually not jumping over the fact of how have we agreed to function as a team. Most teams get together and they focus on the work and they jump over they're so focused on what they'll do that there's very little attention to how shall we treat one another. And then, which is fine while you're eating donuts, right? But as soon as you're actually in any sort of conflict where because you're trying to create something, you're going to wish that you had already established a team agreement that you could refer to. So budgeting the time for it makes a world of difference. Untrustworthiness at the top. Untrustworthiness. And often that has two different components. One is, I don't trust you to be benevolent. And another is, I just don't trust you that you'll deliver. And there is a Chris Creel, who's a coach who's doing some fascinating things with Slack-driven coaching, AI coaching. Collected a data set where he asked members of an organization to provide coaching feedback to other members of that organization. Cool little AI bot that helped coach them through that. And then he realized, he looked at the data and found that many people in the organization were providing coaching to one person. And most of that coaching was about reliability. And the interesting thing was that person was completely overburdened. So what other people experienced as a lack of, as being untrustworthy, in fact was due to just having a sky-high whip, right? Too many things that they were trying to do all at once. So looking at the team and having agreements of how will we function as a system helps get past that. It helps get past the, oh, I am doing this, oh, you are getting in my way. No, we are doing this. You are contributing to what we are trying to do together, and we have certain protocols that we've agreed upon to invoke whenever we're having too much tension, or simply not being effective at what we're doing. Anyone else have a
Well, you mentioned you're going to have a silver bullet for the vigilante problem.
Oh, so that was the create team rules.
Okay.
And then make it transparent when somebody is not following the team rules.
Okay.
So that way, this is in real life vigilantes, right? Once you make it clear that there are vigilantes, people will shy away from that. So thanks for bringing that up. Thank you very much. All right.
Let's move on to our next hill, which is no trust hell. Matthias, can you move the cursor over to the next button? And our question is, in what keeps organizations in no trust hell?
And can you explain no trust hell?
Excellent. No trust hell is the larger superset of dysfunctional behaviors that show up because one person does not trust that another person will actually follow through on what they said, or they do not trust that they actually mean what they say. And that you'll see this not only at the personal level, but also at the organizational level. We don't trust them. Those people don't do anything productive. When they send that request, they're just trying to get in our, stop us from doing meaningful work, right? All of that is an example of fairly low trust in the benevolence and effectiveness of another organization.
A symptom is when people stick to the contract fiercely. Like, we cannot let go of the contract because if we do, then the contractors will just run rampant all over us, and we the government, will not get what we asked for.
So this is a bit of a big one in the government circles, right? Very commonly, and specifically for that reason, where some people will say, but my job is not to trust the other organization. My job is to get the best deal we can, or even I have had the experience with another group where I gave them the benefit of the doubt and they stuck it to me, so therefore I'll never do that again. Right? All of those are symptoms of no trust hell. And so we're asked what keeps organizations? Fear of losing your job. That's an interesting one. Could somebody comment on that? Has anybody had an experience of somebody being afraid of losing their job?
So, places I've worked, people who tend to own like databases are data owners.
Right.
They do not like to share their data, so they don't trust people, because if they share it, then they lose the ability to control it. So they fear losing their job if it gets out.
Even outside of the database world, there's places where you'll encounter information is power. So you ask for information and they carefully don't give it to you because they want to use that as a lever of power.
Going back to our shuhari thing, you might start out with one role in an organization, and one of the ways that we can build trust within an agile transformation is to say, you have a role and you have a job. Those are two separate things. And your role may change. So maybe you're a DBA today, but tomorrow you'll be a quality assurance person for that database, right? So even though somebody else would be doing that sort of job, or the job won't even be needed because we're going to automate something, right? So the role may change. You will have a paycheck because we value your input. And at Motley Fool, they created this chart, and they evaluate people based on their potential and their is it value?
Delivery, perhaps?
Delivery, maybe? Anyway. And so the idea is that if you're really good at your job, you're over here. If you're capable of shifting to a completely different job, you're up here. And human resources tend to spend a lot of their time over here, the worst performers and the people who aren't able to shift to a different job. And what they said is, you need to shift over to here and spend 80% of your human resources time encouraging the people who are good at their jobs and capable of adjusting. Because this is really important to the no trust hell, or escaping from it, is encouraging the people who can shift to something else, because fear of losing your job is a big deal. But it's your job, it's your role, not your job that's
Feed an opportunity and starve a problem.
Yeah, terrific phrase. One thing that I found, so you gave the example of data and information as power. This is something that I'm on a team, an Agile IV&V team. Yes, it's not an oxymoron. I think we're doing it right. But we are very much a data-driven team, and we work with other organizations that we contact, and we present visualizations about healthy behavior. And the interesting thing is, once we visualize, we start counting healthy behaviors. Teams look at that and say, oh, is that what the organization values? Is that what they want more of? Well, we're going to start gaming that. So they carefully start gaming themselves into a healthy direction, which overall works for everyone. But that first moment, that first interaction is fraught with a lack of trust. And so we focus on both benevolence and delivery. We say, we are here to share a success story. So we talk to the team, we bring some data to show our competence. We keep the focus on what is positive about that team, even if there are other things which are not positive. And then we help deliver a visualization, something that makes them look good. And we do that quickly. So fairly quickly we've established that we mean well, we're not there to make them look bad, and we're capable of being faithful partners. And then we have a solid relationship that allows us to move forward. And then we've bought ourselves some capital later to point out, you know, we're going to bring some visualizations later about cycle time. And I noticed you guys have some really long-running stories. Here's a list of the long-running stories. do you want to maybe address these before we make that visualization so it looks better, right? So all of that would be a way of entering into a trusting relationship with that group by focusing on how can I make this other group look good, and then from there we have a solid working foundation.
So the fear one is the biggest bullet here, and with any fear, you don't, if you have a fear of heights, you don't go skydiving. That is likely to incur trauma. So you start small,
Yes.
and it's a bit of what Dave was just describing there. So we have a couple of silver bullets for this one. One was you start small in order to minimize the fear and gain the trust. And oh, the other one was adapting to change. All right. It is 7:23, so we can. I'll do another 5 minutes.
We've now covered your top 4 Agile Hells, and we're now hitting the middle of the mark. This is the last Agile Hell that we've committed to. It is, let's see, we've covered No Trust. Oh, I'm sorry, this is now our technical hell.
No.
No?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We just did No Trust. So we'll give you all a quick vote. Just do a thumbs up, thumbs down, or you don't care. Thumbs up is, I want to hear about technical hell. Thumbs down is, I'd kind of like to do a Q&A where people could just ask questions because there might be something outside the box. So we want to give you all that option. So everybody hold your fist up in the air. Don't vote yet. Don't vote yet, but hold your fist up in the air. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, we'll do technical hell. Matthias, can you advance us?
All right.
Putting 5 minutes on the clock.
So now, this is your 6th hell. A lot of you, I think, have perhaps encountered this, but aren't too worried about it because you've seen organizations that have successfully navigated it. So that's our question. Can you share in one word, what escapes have you seen from technical hell? If you really have to wrangle a two-word phrase, like put a hyphen in between them.
And technical hell again is?
So technical hell is a organization that struggles with the essence of Agile, which is delivery. So they just can't get a change software, and invariably it's software, but change software out the door. And often that is because of regression testing. They're always, they're doing manual regression testing, so every time they add another change, the next deployment is a little bit slower. Or they have significant technical debt in that their code was thrown together in a way that's hard to understand and hard to update safely.
So Joanna Rothman's one of those Agile rock stars, and she once said to me that 85% of the problems in Agile and software development are actually human resources, people-to-people issues. And she said the other 15% are also human-to-human problems, but you just have to dig deeper. So the point is we have 9 hells, 8 of them are about those human-to-human concerns, and then because we are doing software development, we created a hell that's specifically about the actual technical stuff. So this is kind of what this bucket is about.
Yeah. I love the answers that I was going to say.
Never mind.
I love the answers that have come in so far. There's a stress on automation. I think that is kind of, I don't think you're going to have a smooth running enterprise of any kind without significant automation. What I have found at one organization is they did a lot of the wrong kind of automation. They did a lot of UI automation, and those tests wound up being both time-consuming and very fragile. And so they needed to, they did their big push for automation, and then they found that they were still in technical hell. And so they needed to reset. And in particular for them, they said, all right, I'm gonna go out, get some more knowledge, and came back saying, really where automation needs to focus is at the unit testing level and integration testing to a lesser extent. But we really need to get out of the business of a heavy reliance on UI-driven tests. And so they, what helped with that was simply making visible. We actually counted the tests that were available in the code base and then produced a pyramid and made visible how often people were making changes at the different layers. And it became fairly clear that around 50% of the changes were focused on UI. And over about the next year, generally that shrank a lot. And that took just making it visible so that people could realize, oh, I didn't realize we were spending so much time maintaining those UI tests. And we also had a fair bit of leadership, where our leaders said, no, seriously, I want you to get out of that business of heavy reliance on UI tests. In fact, the way he phrased it was, I want no UI tests. Just get out of that business. He used hyperbole as a leadership strategy, and it worked quite well. Any other examples that come to your mind?
I want to double down a bit on one of the things that Dave said, which is making sure you do the right type of automation. Sometimes there's a temptation to do this documentation of how we're going to do our pipeline, and then that's what it is because you've documented it. In fact, when we started spinning up this presentation, we made a handout that we were going to give to everybody every single time. And then we realized, oh wait, we change what we say each time, so we don't necessarily want to be pinned down to that one. By the way, the one silver bullet we had for technical hell was automation. So you guys are right in line with us. But adaptability is really key to those technical hells.
Can I call out some other silver bullets that we see listed here? Eliminate manual approvals. So I did to call it a value stream map would be excessive. It was simply a list of all the different things that are done in one organization that had pretty good practices. They're getting daily deployments out on a code base that was around 400,000 lines of code. I mean, it was not small. One of you suggested, hey, have smaller releases. This is a pretty huge release, but it was rolling out every day. And I just listed, these are all the different things that happen. And then I color-coded in green anything that was automated. And people looked at it and said, wow, there's a list of 32 things there. And only 8 of them are automated. They were surprised to know, different parts of the organization didn't know of all the different approvals and manual steps that had built up over time. And so once they saw it, they said, all right, clearly that's not what we want. And so I had people from 2 different teams begin to discuss, how can they make that, how could they eliminate one of those steps? How could they kick that off automatically? And within about 4 months later, another team created a deployment management service that took care of all the different communication tasks between passing information from one group to the next. It's not fully automated, but it's dramatically faster than it used to be. And all of that started just with making things visible. So that might be a secret silver bullet. An invisible bullet for technical hell is make things visible because people probably don't see how big the problem is.
All right. Even when I'm not speaking, I tend to be like just in front of the door, in front of Matthias to leave for the evening. So I plan to stick out around for a while. David, you're going to be here for a little bit. So if you want to hang back and chat, again, if you liked it, actually even if you didn't like it, please tell your friends to come visit us. We appreciate people coming to see us at the Agile 2019 conference.
I will see your appreciation and raise you one. Could I ask you for a parting gift? Matthias, could you move your cursor over to the next button? I ask you your help improving this presentation. Go ahead and click on it. Right now, if you go back to your apps, you're going to see a presentation survey. It has 4 questions. Most people can finish it in about...
It will show up.
Yes. Your individual responses will not be unveiled to the group. And you can finish it in around 90 seconds or less.
But we won't know who.
Enormously useful to us, and we're going to carefully look or read it over after we're done.
And we don't know who said what, so we will see the information. Mm-hmm. If you say like, I, Matthias, think this was junk, well then I'll know it's Matthias.
And we would be delighted if anybody has additional comments or questions, either about the format of the presentation or the content. As you could tell, I can definitely overtalk this. So if you want to go into overtime, I'm here for you.
So I'm going to do my role and say, let's cut it off so the people who want to go can go, because some people are here for just the presentation.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Pizza. Thank you all.